I think they're all the same, actually.
I think
Yeah.
just save smaller. That'd be a pretty clever way to save money. I can't read this. We're saving on cake.
The town's got something going on too, don't they?
Oh, that means.
My oldest is
Ordinance changes.
Yeah, it should be some
Potential.
interest, should be some interest in some of that. Usually it works out though. It's not- No, it's not.
Yeah.
We're on. Okay, thank you. Yeah. I'm gonna just have to speak up. No, you're saying something, I lost my thought. Okay. My flowers. Don't smash it with, yeah, I don't want to smash the flowers with gallons. All right. Call the meeting to order.
Point of order, please.
Yes, sir.
Would it be possible to review how masks are to be worn in the high school?
Like as this current event?
Yeah, what the expectations are.
Well, the expectations are people to wear a mask properly. Jed is the principal of this building. I assume that's the proper way for people to wear masks, are covering their nose and mouth. Okay. All right.
Can we ask that everyone please conform?
We could do that, since that is the policy in our schools. If there isn't anybody, I can't see anybody from here, but okay.
Thank
I
you.
think we're good. All right. Thank you. We'll move on. First up is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Next up, approval of the minutes of January 24, 2022. Do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Motion from Jay. Do we have a second? Second from Karen. Any discussions, corrections? Otherwise, hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of January 24, 2022? It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, approval of roll of accounts dated January 27, 2022 in the amount of $337,764.86 and dated February 10, 2022 in the amount of $140,614.47. Do I have a motion to approve the rolls? Move to approve the rolls as listed. The motion, John, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Earl. Are there any questions about this discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving roll of accounts as presented? It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, report of committees. Do we have any committee reports at this time? Okay, all right. I believe we do. Next up, administrators reports. Mr. Bell is right in front. Maybe, I guess we'll start with him.
Mr. Brett will come up with me to make it a little bit quicker rather than go back and forth. Really quick update. We did receive back our NEAS report. I spent the last couple of leadership team meetings going over that report with the leadership team. We've carved out time between our faculty meetings and in-service days on when we're going to do the rest of that work based off that NEAS report. I talked with Peter at the end of last week, and we're going to put together a presentation for the board and roll out the entire report. I've got a faculty meeting this week with my faculty to go over a lot of those details, and then after vacation, we'll have a presentation for you on that report. But so far, so good. It was good. Good. And Mr. Brown?
Yep. As always, I'd just like to recognize some students that got Student of the Month in various areas.
First off, over at the Tech Center, we had several students get recognized. First off is Tyler Fecto for machine tool, Miles Tutil for machinist operations, Dayton Dutil, auto services, Devin Lively, food preparation, and Harley Pomerlo for outdoor leadership. As you know, we're one of 4 schools that go there, but we got about half of the students of the month recognition over there. So our students do a great job over there with those programs, and certainly proud of them. Also, our Winslow High School Student of the Month is Sam Schmidt, a quiet leader in our school, is involved in a lot of different activities, National Honor Society, sports, and so on. But again, just another quiet leader that, does a lot of great things here for us at Winslow, and certainly proud to recognize these students. One coffee. That's all I got.
All right, any questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Bird?
Good evening, everyone. A couple quick hitters. We have filled a few of our vacancies since our last meeting. We have a special ed teacher in place now that's been with us a few weeks. An art teacher who works with our 6th grade at the elementary school, teaching 7th and 8th grade art. She's been fantastic. We replaced our nurse. So there's 3, Jones counting, there's 3. And then we're still waiting the PE trickle effect, which impacts the entire district. So we're very, very pleased on that. We are Student Spotlight Awards this Friday to recognize more students. Another Renaissance assembly coming up to also recognize our students for their academics. So excited about that. And to piggyback on the MMTC, our 8th graders continue their trip tomorrow. So monthly, they're attending to be with mentors of high school. I think we send 25 students over. We wish we could fill more slots because there's a waiting list, and they are able to explore criminal justice, nursing, etc. So we're very excited about that. That's all I have until Monday.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Bird? All right, very good. Sounds like a great program, exposing them to the tech center. Very good. Gala.
Mr. Burke is going to be speaking for the elementary during.
Alrighty.
So a couple of things just to share from the elementary. We are participating in our own form of the Read to Be Challenge. The Read to Be Challenge is a state public awareness program to promote childhood literacy. And what it is trying to do through that awareness is to highlight the fact that in children's literacy development, it's important to hear fluent readers as well as the other work that they do. So Winslow Elementary School is putting a little twist on that, so we're calling it Read Across WES. And of course, this is also under a bigger umbrella of Read Across America, which is sponsored by the NEA. So for the month of February, we're just trying to increase that joy of reading and challenging folks to become involved. Our teachers are going to be involved in some special activities through the course of the month that have been offered by our literacy specialists. Some ideas that were shared by Andrea Bragdon, our literacy specialist. One of those ideas is in addition to the classroom teachers doing some extra activities and doing some other work, like adding an extra ending to a story or writing some sort of counter story. She's invited some other members of the staff that aren't classroom teachers to also go into the classroom and read. So I was in one today. I struggled through it a little bit because the story that I read, or stories I read, were chapters of a book that my mom wrote. So it brought back a flood of childhood memories that we shared together in the 4th grade classroom, this hearing class. But we have one of our school nurses is participating, Mrs. Heesiers, both our literacy specialists, Mrs. Bragdon and Mr. Martin, our math specialist, Mrs. Vassell. Michelle Lake is scheduled tomorrow. I heard her talking about you've written like a counter story for the story that you've read, something about a big dog versus your little dog. And Mr. Timotop is scheduled to be over on Thursday for reading the 1st grade classroom. So again, we think it will be exciting to have our students see other folks in this capacity. We want them to know that reading is a fundamental piece of our lives, all across our lives. The other thing I just want to mention that this week we're participating in some themed activities, being the week before the February vacation. Today was Wear Your Pink or Red for Healthy Heart Day. And
have to acknowledge it was also Valentine's Day. We're getting around that. Tomorrow, we're wearing your favorite outfit or favorite color. Wednesday is wear clothes related to something that makes you happy. An example might be a sport or a hobby. Thursday is mismatch day. Wear clothes that don't match or are on backwards like your shirt. And Friday, of course, will be black and orange day for school spirit. I think that's all I have.
Good. Mr. Burgoyne.
I have some good news, a lot of good things happening in athletics. I want to congratulate our boys indoor track team. They won the KBAC Class B championship. I'm told it's the first time since 1968. I haven't walked the halls to verify it, but I don't know where we'll find 1968, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Our cheerleaders were our Class C Southern runner-ups, which is an awesome finish. And they just finished fourth in the state of Maine out of 17 teams. Alan Rogers, who's a senior in high school, was a Class B South Regional Champion in wrestling. And Sam Schmidt, who's also a senior, was a runner-up in his weight class too. So that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Emma Farnham won the athlete of the meet at the Kennebec Valley Athletic Championship swim competition, which is great. That's quite a few schools to be named athlete of the meet. This week, both our boys and girls basketball teams are entering the playoffs. The girls will be on the road tomorrow in Herman, and the boys will be hosting Bucksport on Wednesday. Our girls hockey team had a successful season that ended with a loss to St. John's. It was a great season, and the boys are still playing. And lastly, the unified basketball team will host the game on Thursday at 3:30. We hope a lot of people come out.
Sounds great. I did catch some of the girls' hockey game on TV because I was hoping to get there, but didn't. But what a game.
Double overtime, yeah.
Overtime now.
Can you give us a little more information on the unified game? As far as attendance, how's that working?
There is going to be some, I think, I have it right in front of me, but I think it was 30 tickets available to the general public. Each athlete was going to get 4 tickets. We're going to have 30 student tickets, but we're still keeping it at that number we are proposed, the 114. So it's still there, but there will be some tickets to the general public.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Jim. Lots of good stuff there. Let's see, Michelle, anything for us?
I have nothing new this month.
Okay.
Ongoing projects that we discussed previously.
We got a couple things to do.
Couple things going, yeah.
Great, thank you. You mind, Mr. Shelley Phillips?
No, we're just plowing snow and staying nice. That's what we're doing right now.
All right. Well, that's good. Jennifer?
We did just receive word that our special education audit first, so that, yeah, we will be using their special files and provide us with that. To take a minute to publicly show my appreciation for the administrators that school. They're on the ground working with special department continuously, helping staffing and everything that goes into doing it couldn't be done without them. My appreciation for all that they do.
All right, any questions for Jennifer? Great, thank you. Will, did you have anything for us with technology?
I am presenting my budget this evening, so I'll use my time then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Will. I think I got all the administrators. Mary Beth, did you have anything from the WEA?
Nope, just negotiations continue on. You guys are super busy with meetings.
Yeah, a little bit. All right. Okay, I think I got everybody on that. Next up, Amanda with the finance assistant report.
Yep, 61.64% of the fiscal year has passed, and 60.32% of the budget has been accounted for. If you do not include encumbered items, 59.55% of the budget has been spent. And based on our conversations over the past few months, we're trending in that direction that we were talking about. So we'll continue to monitor closely, but
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
All right. Very good. Any questions for Amanda? Okay. Next up would be superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for putting out that. Something that you'd like to speak to tonight. We appreciate your input. Every time we have a school board meeting, John Perry's asked me to give you an update on COVID cases and how the numbers are running. So I have a sheet to the board. I'll go over this with you. Cases to date, bring your attention to the month of January. The month of January was a really bad month for us. We had 223 cases in the month of January. That was a spike after the holidays. We experienced the highest cases ever due to the Omicron variant spread so quickly. We're not alone. Cases were that way throughout the state. Having said that, you want to focus on some positives. Really mean that. If you look at February, I know we've only in 2 weeks of February, but if you look at February, you see that the numbers indicate we're moving in the right direction. The first 2 weeks, we've got 46 cases in 2 weeks. So if you continue on this trend, another 2 weeks, you're looking at 90 cases, 100 cases, which is still higher than what we had at the beginning of the year up until December. But it's going in the right direction. It's not 223, which was horrific. So I'm bringing this to your attention because I'm certain that people are reading, following the media headlines. Media headlines are stating that cases are starting to drop. Natural reaction to that kind of news that people want to know, what does this mean for schools? How does it impact masking? I'll tell all of you sitting here tonight, it's the $1 million question for all of us. Like the vast majority of other public schools in the state of Maine, Winslow has followed the CDC guidance of the medical experts in order to keep our students and our staff safe. All students, all staff, whether you're on a football team, and you're out there pounding people, or you're immunocompromised, coming to school in a global pandemic is extremely dangerous for you. Our duty is to keep all students, all staff safe. What's happened because of our actions? We've been in school 5 days a week for in-person learning throughout the year. We have not shut down like other school systems have had to this year. There have been times when it's been closed, but we have not shut down. Mr. Burgoyne talked about sports tonight. We had a full complement of sports season. It wasn't long ago, you guys weren't on the field at all. So we made some progress. Not 100% there yet, but we've made some progress. The other thing that I really want to point out, that at the beginning, or at the end of last year, there was a directive from this board, and we heard the same thing from parents. Remote learning isn't working for my student. Get my students in school every day. That was one of the charges that we were assigned, what we did in order to make that happen and keep everyone safe. Whenever the guidance has changed from the CDC, and it changes often, that's what makes it so confusing. The language changes, the guidance changes. Whenever the guidance has changed, we've adjusted accordingly, doing everything in our power to once again keep our students and our faculty safe. Keep them in school.
Point of order, please.
Yes.
Could we get the audience to conform to the mask requirements of covering their noses with their masks?
If there is anybody that is not wearing a mask properly, I'd ask that you do so. I can't see any specifically from here, but
Thank you.
I,
Another media headline you might have read or heard about, if you haven't, it's important that I share this with you. Is that Dr. Shaw and the Department of Education are meeting with regional superintendent groups to hear our concerns, which include your concerns as well. We hear you. We're letting them know what you're saying. We're letting them know that you're tired. We also understand that we need to be safe, that there are certain guidelines that we need to follow. And there's a misnomer out there that we can do whatever we want. We can't. There's this thing called an SOP, Standard Operating Procedure, which we must abide by. Important to put that out there. We are very encouraged conversations that we're having with Dr. Shaw and the CDC. They're hearing our pleas, calling for a return of a semblance of normalcy. Like all of you, we anxiously await what Dr. Shaw and the medical experts will offer. We expect it will be in the form of some type of metric outlining the conditions that would be necessary in order to move away from universal mask wearing. It's going to be based on the science. It's not going to be somebody's opinion. We expect to hear more about this week and in the coming weeks. Most of all, I ask for your patience. Come a long ways. Getting closer. We're making decisions based on the science to keep everyone safe. We're sick of this as much as you are. I say that in all honesty. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of screaming all the time so you can hear me. But we have certain things that we need to abide by. We're doing the best that we can to keep all students, strong football players, those who are compromised, safe and able to attend Winslow Public Schools. The public education is for all kids. Any questions? John?
I would be interested if it's possible, I don't know, even know if this is even possible, in another month, I'd like to see a total percentage of how many, in other words, the percentage of our total school population that is tested positive. Not broken down, I don't expect any names or even, doesn't have to be broken down, but would it be possible to know that number? In other words, is there like 80 to 90%, or is it 70%? Or
Certainly talk with the nurses about that, John.
if it's possible, I'm not even sure if they could figure that out with the way that, and then some people would probably repeat it, but.
I will say, I talked about, I think you're gonna see some type of metrics that's gonna come out and say, we don't know what that metrics is gonna look like. I know that vaccinations are pretty important. I can tell you right now, today, that the elementary school, 166 students out of 555 are fully vaccinated. We're about 30% of our elementary school kids. That's average for Kennebec County. It's about where Kennebec County is. So if they do a metric that looks at Kennebec County, we would be in the average range there. Junior high school, 77 students out of 166, about 46.4%. High school, 222 students out of 382, about 58%. Where we stand right now. So when they start talking about a metric, I'm sure that's going to be one of the things that they pull up and use. I'm guessing, I say I'm sure, I'm guessing it's going to be something. Any other questions? Okay.
You headed right to the point I was going to ask about the difference in vaccination rates, because obviously our youngest students aren't even eligible yet. Are you hearing from Dr. Shaw the idea that we may be able to eliminate masks at the upper grade levels sooner? because we have higher vaccination rates? Because I'm concerned if we have to wait for our kindergartners to be protected by vaccine, that could mean that our high schoolers that have had vaccines for months and months may not need masks as long. And I'm just wondering if that's being discussed at all.
So when I say that the regional superintendents, and I'm talking about throughout the state, I had conversations with Dr. Shaw and the CDC, it's exactly these types of suggestions that are being made. What if? What if? And could be a part of a metric that would come about. And yes, what you're suggesting is something that has been presented. Could you do a portion of your school district based on things such as vaccination?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. No other questions for Peter? We'll move on. Next up is our public comment section. I do have an introduction to that for those who might be new to the process on this and new to our meetings. Oh, and there are copies of our policy over here on the chair. School boards are elected to govern their schools. Our meetings are for the board to conduct the required business of the school district. By law, this business is conducted in the view of the public. While these meetings are in the public, they are not public meetings, as a legislative session is not a public meeting. They are in the public, but they're not intended to be interactive question-answer public meetings. The law requires us to provide a public comment period during a meeting. The public comment period is your opportunity to express your views within the guidelines of our policy. It is not an open discussion period. Accordingly, do not expect the board to respond to your questions or concerns tonight. While a simple question that is raised in public comment period may be answered at the discretion of the chair, for a more thoughtful and thorough response, we suggest that questions be emailed to the appropriate building administrator first, then to the superintendent, and then to board members if you want to pursue it further. Please keep in mind that a response may take a few days due to the requirements of the day, or to allow time to gather the information requested. I also want to remind everyone that you may submit written questions to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you choose, or if you're tuned in online and you'd like to send something in, that is another way to do it. In order that we hear from the largest number of different voices and have time to conduct our regular business, each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. At the outset, after being recognized by the chair, we ask that the speakers identify their name and town of residence. Please try to be brief and try not to repeat yourself. Please direct your comments to the board. The board will not permit complaints or allegations against staff members or particular students. These are matters of which the board is not permitted to hear in public. If there are complaints against staff or students, these will be handled appropriately through established policies and procedures. We know discussions of school-related issues can be emotional, but please remember our children are watching and we are neighbors, so please be civil. We will not permit profanity or shouting at one another or comments that disparage or attack individuals or groups of individuals. Thank you for your patience during this introduction. We have hope and confidence that your participation will be helpful and constructive to the board. So with that being said, I open the floor for public comments. If you wish to speak, if you could come to the podium and again, introduce yourself and your town of residence. Does anybody like to speak at this time? Okay. Hearing none?
Good, thanks.
Okay, very good. All right, well, that's why I want to do the introduction, make sure everybody knew that that was their opportunity and you know what it was all about. So great. Yes.
I think that maybe this could be. Just curious on gym's capacity limit. Why
we have such a small amount when other schools are allowed to be in full capacity. Just curious what the reason is there.
Well, allowed is one thing. It is, each school has their own policies that they're enforcing. What we have in place is what we have approved at this school. Other schools have chosen to do other things. I'm not sure what they all are or what they base their criteria on, but our capacity is based upon our discussions and recommendations. That's where we're at. So that's what I got right now. If you want to express it further, I mean, maybe you could reach out to Chad or Jim or whatever, and they might have some more details on exactly what those numbers are, and how it works. And spring sports are gonna be outdoors soon, so that's great. Spring's coming. All right, okay, great. I guess we'll move on then. Old business, we have nothing in the old business category. New business. Public gifts and donations to the school, and that will be Mr. Burgoyne that's presenting.
I got a phone call from Coach Littlefield. He was approached about getting some shoulder pads and some brand new with tags on girdles. It's an anonymous gift, so I'm not going to tell you who it is. If you accept the gift, I will make sure it's been inspected, and if it needs to be reconditioned, I will. But my understanding is it's primo equipment. So I just ask you to decide if we can accept that gift, and if we can, that'd be great. It would save us some money down the road on other things. Yes?
I was just gonna make the motion.
Oh. Yep.
Do we have a motion to accept? Does it first, well, we can have motion, we can have questions before we get there.
I move to accept the gifts as presented.
Okay,
Second.
we have a second. Any discussion, questions and such for Mr. Burgoyne?
Yeah, we do have adequate space for this? We do, yeah.
Gifts are appreciated, and we really appreciate it. So all in favor of approving the acceptance of the gift? It is unanimous. Be sure to pass along our praise to the anonymous donor.
We will send a thank you.
Very much appreciated. All right. Next up, talking about budgets. So we have technology first. Yeah, I'll just say, because I know there's a lot of people here, and I don't know, if you want to stay and listen to all this, you're welcome. But we're going to be talking about budgets for a little while here, and that might not be of your greatest interest, but I just thought I'd throw the word out there. Don't feel obligated to stay because you're here at the beginning, that you need to stay to the end, because most people don't.
Oh, come on, Mary.
Oh, come on, Mary Beth, come on.
You know, technology budgets are so exciting.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we have Will doing the technology budget.
Hi, I always like to start by going to the bottom line on page 2.
Yep.
And right now, the requested technology budget for next year is showing a request that is up by $118,914.88. So the question is, my goodness, where did that number come from? That's a big one. So, probably the biggest number you'll see contributing to that is back on page 1, right at the top, line 2. And what we're looking at is 320 student laptops or Chromebooks are falling out of maintenance and support for updates. And so as a district, it's usually wise to purchase devices that will continue to receive updates to the software. Google for Chromebooks maintains software updates for about 5 to 6 years, and eventually they stop doing that. And while they will run without the updates, you run the risk that something like the state science testing software or the state data software will require a particular version, which this one doesn't have. So that is our recommendation to purchase that, and you'll see that that's $89,600, which is a pretty big number. Traditionally though, we've converted these to a 4-year lease. But I always like to come to the school board initially with the total amount. It's like when you go to the car dealership, you ask how much is that truck? They say it's only $200 a month. And you say, no, I want to know how much the truck is, then we can talk about the lease. So anyway, that's the dollar figure. But traditionally, these have been done as a lease. And if we did that, then assuming interest rates continue to stay low, that would be roughly reduced to $22,400, reducing the technology budget request by $67,200. So that would bring our request down significantly. Another thing we're still waiting on the wings on, the state MILTI program is considering expanding to an additional grade level next year, devices that they reimburse. We had a meeting with them last week, but I'm still waiting for the official word. But if they did that, we could possibly reduce the number of devices we would have to pay for locally. But until we get some paperwork that really says that, I'm a little reluctant to count on that just yet. But anyway, so that is, needless to say, a pretty large chunk of money. Most of the other stuff, little salary increases and other things, but I wouldn't say that there's any other single large bucket that's, that you could look at towards that increase. On page 2 at the top, there is about $5,454 that you haven't seen in the past. And that's under the notes, you'll see $4,704 for Google Education Enterprise and $750 for Google Meet systems. Those were enhanced versions of the Google Suite that we purchased during remote learning to provide additional features that were important for remote learning. And they were traditionally covered by CARES COVID money. Not sure yet whether they will continue to support that, nor are we certain that we're going to need it next year. But at this point, until we know more, I thought it prudent to leave that in the budget. Another shift you might notice, which is not a sort of a cost increase or cost savings, is on line 15 with leased equipment. You're like, gee, why is that jumped up $17,496.20? Really what it is when we bought the new phone system, that was originally budgeted under technology hardware. But once we converted that to a lease, we started paying for it out of the lease. But that's why you see the technology hardware line going down, not the whole amount because we like to buy server, but there's a little bit of that offset in it. But to be honest, I think that's the bulk of the big story in the technology budget, which is there is a request increase, but should you convert things to leases, it will not be a significant increase, primarily driven by salary increases and maybe a little bit of movement.
Question, through the chair. What percentage will that 320 Chromebooks be? And I mean, what's the cycle as far as replacement, release?
Sure. We're technically 1-to-1. So if you were to just take our student enrollment, then you just have to, figure that out from the 320. Things are a little off kilter because we weren't 1-to-1 kindergarten through 12 until COVID came. The Department of Ed, the federal government provided a tremendous amount of funding and brought hundreds and hundreds of Chromebooks into our districts for students. So we're going to we have a whole bunch that are relatively new as of last year and the year before. We get a smaller number that are old. And so really, the ones that the state, the federal government put in place took care of a lot of the ones that were already going out. And so this is kind of the last batch. So after this, just about all the Chromebooks will have at least 4 years left in them.
So all of them?
Yeah, so this 320 represents the remaining ones that aren't, that are falling out of support.
Now, is there a plan in place to cyclically do this so that way we're not facing
a massive outlay in 4 years when or 5 years, when all of these all of a sudden go defunct?
Well, one, we would have, as a school district, 4 years from now, need to have the philosophical/educational discussion around whether or not one-to-one is what we still feel is needed in our district. And then on top of that, yes, it would be lovely if not all of our devices sunsetted at the same time, but you staggered them. But it's just the way that they came into our district, made that hard. What's nice is it's a mixture of manufacturers, and so they don't, even though we got them last year, depending on the model number, they may have slightly off-kilter support rates.
Any other questions for Will at this time? Meg?
I just have a question on, so the 89.6, is that, the 89,600
Yes.
number? So is that, because you said you're looking at leasing too, is that to purchase plus an estimated, like, interest rate? Because you mentioned something about rates, is that to borrow? I was just,
The 89,600 would be if we purchased it outright, just cut a check and bought one.
okay,
And what I imagine may happen is that if we're sharpening our pencils around the budget, what has traditionally happened in the past, once again, not that I can suppose that the board would suggest it, but traditionally we've converted that to a 4-year lease. So you roughly take that number and cut it into a quarter every year. Obviously, interest rates make that change a little bit, but in at least recent history, interest rates have been pretty low, and so that hasn't been a disastrous amount.
okay. So is this plan is just to buy them all, and then plan B is to lease?
But if the school board says we can't afford this all at once, then we will have to figure out
Pay
other options.
interest over time.
Buy
Gotcha.
fewer,
Yeah,
lease them, auto drives, whatever.
Yeah.
we do.
okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Dick?
I have questions on 2 lines. First, line 16.
16.
You have 3,200 proposed for next year for cell phones for tech staff. It doesn't look like we're going to use that much this year. Could you explain a little more about where that 3,200 comes from?
Sure. We cover a data plan plus cell phone plan for the staff, the technology staff, because they're out and about in different buildings. We also have, I guess I would call it, an informal on-call system. We're able to get in touch with each other on the weekends or after hours or other kinds of things. So that's the reasoning behind covering that. I'd have to look into what we pay monthly for that, and we just have to multiply that by the number of tech staff times 12. But it might be, so if we've only currently spent $1254.95, there's a monthly, every month that keeps going. So I guess I'd have to talk to the office and figure out what the estimated amount is based on that going forward.
Thank you. It just looks like based on this year, you might be able to shave that down a little bit.
Sure.
A similar question on line 18, technology services.
Yes.
We've spent a little less than half of it, and based on my experience with school budgets, technology services is one of those things that tends to be front-loaded in the budget. So the fact that we are a little bit below currently makes me wonder if you could dig a little deeper into that number.
From my understanding, technology services is a fee that pays for technology-related shared expenses that used to be part of the AOS, including your shared technology director and a few other things. So, for example, my salary paid every 2 weeks slowly contributes to that. There may be some other small things in there. But once again, that is a number that is put in there by central office or payroll, and then they accrue expenses if I'm correct, although Amanda could correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, you're correct.
So it's not really front-loaded.
Right.
So if you look at the,
So that's about right, we're about,
And they work in the summer.
okay.
Yeah, I'm a year round.
Okay. So that makes sense.
Thank you.
Because we're about 60%.
That's not true.
Just the other point on that.
Good question.
A little bit.
All right. Any other questions for Will on the technology budget? I think it is likely that we will probably be divvying up that 96,000 somehow or another when we get to that point in the budget.
But now you know the cost of that pickup truck.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right,
It's a nice truck.
thank you.
Yeah, it's technologically sound.
All right.
That's funny. Take the test to the space shuttle.
All right, next up, the elementary school.
Oh, already here.
Oh, she's already way ahead of us.
As I present the Winslow Elementary School budget, there are a few things to think about. This is our first full year with sixth grade in our building, and it's our second full year with COVID, which means that the last 2 years may not have had the supplies and materials requested as they would have in normal years. I use normal in quotes because each year has its own challenges. So budgeting for a normal year is what we're trying to do for this coming year. With that in mind, we asked our team to look carefully at the materials that they had on hand. Because the last 2 years have been different, it may be that people have ordered things that they thought they could use, and then because of the way that the last 2 years have happened, they weren't able to do that. So when we were working on the budget, we asked teams to really carefully look at what the materials they have, and then what do they need if next year is in fact a normal year. We feel that our teams did a great job of being cautious and thoughtful about their requests. I'll walk you through some of the lines in this budget to give you more information. It's important to note that as we were building the budget, we not only look at current requests, but also the history of a certain line. And I can tell you that Mr. Briggs and I were chatting before this meeting today, and that the history part for both him and I is a little bit challenging because we've never had sixth grade and he's never had 2nd grade. And so, you know, when we worked on this budget, we did the best we could to make our best guesses based on what information we have currently, because we don't have the history with the current setup of our building. So I will make sure that you know the page number we're on, the line number, and the name of the line. And I'll turn so that we can get through this, because I know we have a lot to talk about, but please stop me if there are any questions. I did try to make more notes than I did last year, learning a little bit, so that you had some of the information up front, and potentially some of your questions would be answered. So, I will begin. And again, I have picked the areas to talk about that I think are the ones that are worthy of conversation, but it is possible that you have some questions that I haven't talked about, so please make sure you stop me if there's something that I skipped over, anything I need to address, and I will do my best to do that. So the first line is line 5. If we look at line 5, if you recall at our last meeting, we talked about our current sub-budget. And this is one of those tricky areas because the school year 19-20, we didn't need subs after March of 2020. And so when you're looking at that full year, those numbers are not accurate. Last year and this year was also tricky because we had teachers out for more reasons than they would have in a typical year. But one thing that became clear was that we needed to increase that line, and we increased it to 45,000 based on a 4-year. We looked at 4 years over time to try to get the best prediction of what our budget should be for this coming year. That, yes.
Oh, good. You
Yep.
were about to say it.
Nope. I was going to say that's all for that page. So.
Number, also on 5,
Yeah.
by looking at the number, I'm going to say that does not include the full-time subs.
No. So those subs are funded through our ESSER funds.
Right.
They are not included in this budget.
Just want to make sure.
Okay, so that's all I have for page 1. Yes.
Any other questions on that one? Okay. Jack?
Backing up to number 4, why would an ed tech honor class be an ed tech 3? Ed tech 3s are more expensive, and the primary difference is that ed tech 3s can develop their own curriculum for students where an ed tech 2 can't. So I'm wondering why we would have someone on a bus at an Ed Tech 3 salary level.
So that is not something that I put in there for a note. So I'm going to see if Amanda,
So Mel Drew, who's in payroll, did let me know that, as she was putting in payroll information, if there was something that she thought people might have questions about, she was gonna add some notes, so that would have been Mel Drew.
you don't know what role that is.
Do you have a bus tech?
Not that it is a 3.
Jay,
So we could ask her about that.
one of the things that happens with that is that you have certain ed techs that will
Volunteer.
volunteer to work, ride the bus. And often, and Jennifer's here, and she can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but often we'll have an ed tech 2 who gets promoted to an ed tech 3, because if we put him as an ed tech 3 in a certain classroom working with certain students, we get the main care reimbursement for those people.
Yep.
And so if that person was a 2 and was on the bus and got promoted to a 3 and still has the bus route, they would still be there. That's probably what happened in this particular case, would be my first guess on that one.
Kyle's saying yes.
Kyle is,
I'm gonna guess you're right on. I mean, I don't want to jump in on my presentation, but we have one that I know is a 3 that is running the bus. And it's a new arrangement that we have to put in place.
a good question, Jay, but that's exactly what happens.
Okay, I think the word new bus Ed Tech threw me off, that we might be hiring somebody at an Ed Tech 3 level. which would make sense. Thank you.
All right, moving on to page 2. I'm gonna skip right down to the last line there, so line 40, staff development. So again, this is one of those areas that because of COVID, we haven't used it as much as I think people would like to use it. In the last couple of years, there have been a reduced amount of professional development offered outside of our building. However, we want to continue to allow teachers to have that accessible to them in hopes that someday soon we will be able to participate in, I know, there's my optimism, to participate in some external professional development. So that amount is between $150 and $200 per teacher, per classroom teacher. Some people felt like $150 would be enough for what they were looking for, and some of our teachers requested $200. So that $6,000 is an optimistic view of what, in an ideal world, we would actually have available for teachers for professional development.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Through the chair, question. What is SWANK under the SRO?
Okay, contracted services. So line 39.
Yep.
So Swank is a movie licensing that I believe the whole district has, and it allows us to be able to use and access. I'm going to say this because it's not really technically part of mine, it's everybody, so kind of like I know what I'm talking about. But it allows us to use movies that have copyrights for educational purposes.
Okay.
This isn't a question for you, but I think it might be important for the new people on the board to realize how we pay for the SRO, because I know that there's a sharing / percentage that we've done in the past. Is that what we're seeing here? Is that a percentage of the?
What you're seeing there is the percentage of the SRO salary is taken and divided by 3.
School resource officer.
So it's divided by 3. And so you'll see the SRO in all of the budgets. So we've got the full cost at this point in time.
Okay.
Any more questions on page 2? All right, well, let's move on to page 3. And I'm going to jump down, but certainly we can go back to the math section. I want to talk about each of these lines a little bit. This is where one of the biggest chunks of my budget is. So the first line, line 55, is supplies math. The majority of that request is for manipulatives that are going to support the next line, which is the new math curriculum. We
already have math manipulatives, but because this is a new program, we had each of our teams look at the list of manipulatives that were needed for the new curriculum and compare it to what they currently have. Then a list was developed of what we would need to make sure that when we got this new math curriculum, we could carry it out with fidelity. So that is that line. If we go down to line 56, our new math curriculum, as we've spoken about at previous meetings, we did work this year. Michelle and our math specialist, Keith Martin, and a team of dedicated teachers met multiple times, met with 3 different companies, and the committee selected iReady as the best fit for our school for a K-6 math program. So that is $116,000. That is a 6-year math curriculum. If you look at the next line, line 57, there is a savings of $7,000 there, and that is because the math curriculum includes the iReady math assessment that we had requested separately last year. Questions about that?
Go right ahead. No. Earl pointed J, so what's that with you?
Lines 42 and 43, could you explain to me what scholar means? Supplies, scholar, and scholar supplies?
Yes, so line 42 has to do with these are the supplies that classroom teachers specifically request in their budget that are materials that they're going to use throughout the year. The line 43 is a printing line, and that is one that I do not budget for, that comes from central office. So the line 42 is basically, that's most of the supplies that teachers are requesting comes out of that line.
The 6-year curriculum that you mentioned in association with line 56, is that 6 years in total, or is that 6 years starting with kindergarten, working kindergarten through grade 5?
It is 6 years total.
Okay,
6
so
years,
it's not tied to any grade working in freshman?
No, what it does is
Okay.
it takes kindergarten and however many we predicted that we're gonna have for kindergarten.
Right, each year they'll ask us in the summer, of your kindergarten kids, how many first grade sets of books and everything do you need?
Okay.
You know, how many second grade, and the contract will cover any of that.
Okay.
It's print, all the print materials, which will be books, teacher books, consumables for the kids, and then it's a complete online platform as well.
And the technology package too for anything?
It's all part of it.
Oh, thank you.
Which includes the iReady assessment, which is, if you have to do a presentation for you sometime, it's quite nice.
And it offers intervention tools, which will be helpful because it aligns with the assessment and it gives them next steps for intervention tools. So it really was the best fit for our school.
I'll just ask a question, clarifying, just to be sure I understand. As far as this amount of money on line 56, how much of that is the total cost for the whole implementation of the program? Is this
That is the whole cost.
That's the whole cost?
That's the whole cost for 6 years.
for 6 years?
Yes, if you broke it down, divided by grade, by student, what did we come up with?
It was, I want to say like $3 or $4
Per child.
Right, but we won't see this next year. This is,
Correct.
this
This is
is
a one-year,
the one and done.
this is not every year for 6 years. This is a one-time.
And it includes professional development for faculty, because that will be a very important part of onboarding them.
Sure.
So but every year you're gonna have to replace the consumables, right?
Pardon me?
Every year you're gonna have to replace the
There, it's
consumables.
included for 6 years.
No, right.
So they'll send us
Wow.
any consumables for 6
For
years.
6 years.
And the manipulatives that we're purchasing are cheaper for us to go out and, Amazon them than it is to buy from the company. So keep putting that effort to go to each teacher and see what we would need to buy to save money there on the consumable, the manipulative.
I was going to ask if that was an annual, but that's amazing to me that it's a one-time. And then just before you get too far, and I hate to go backwards, but just on page 1, there was a big budget difference. It's just that number 1 line item, $92,000 budget difference. And you had to know veteran staff replacing beginning teachers, is it because you're hiring more teachers? I just wanted to understand the big picture.
The salary line is one that comes from central office. It is not one that I put in there. I don't know if Leanda has any more
Well,
information.
I can speak to this, I'm sure Peter would, but, yeah. So typically what happens is when we have retiring teachers and such, or they've moved on to other positions or whatever, we budget to replace those teachers with teachers that are 5 years masters.
Oh, okay.
Typically what we use for budgetary purposes, we don't know who we're gonna hire. We do typically try to hire the best qualified, most experienced teacher we can find that fits the need that we have.
Yeah.
It's not that we're always looking for, a beginning teacher.
No, that's.
So that we
makes
budget their 5-year masters as the average, and we've been doing that for years, it kind of seems to work out.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it depends on how many people we have that, are planning on to retire.
It kind of works like a set of stairs where you keep
Yeah.
climbing on the steps, and then when you retire, you fall off the steps.
Yeah.
So you don't do that literally.
I mean, obviously, the more senior teachers, are at the top of the scale, which generally cost more money, and you're not hiring people that are usually at the top. Just because people at the top don't move usually.
Yeah,
So,
no, thank you.
and I guess since we're on that subject, obviously, there is, obviously, we're negotiating a contract, so of course, there'll be some increase there as well, but of course, you've got the whole issue of, as you discussed, 6 classes plus kindergarten and pre-K and all that, that it's kind of a new arrangement. Additionally, I guess I'd also say, if this is budgeted for 10% increase in insurance rates, which is our typical, so we use that as our starting point. We've been fortunate to come in less than that for a number of years. I think I can remember one year that was 11, so that hurt. But typically we come in less than that, so we adjust the budget as soon as we have those numbers. That's what's built into the budget to start.
Again,
Thank
for anyone new, those are based on cases from the history.
Yeah, group
So,
rates, yep. And- yep.
so hopefully, we've been, I think, reasonably fortunate on that front, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before Ms. Gallo moves on? Okay,
Okay, so we're gonna go to page 4. We're doing good. So I'm going to jump to line 67, talk just a little bit about that. So there is what I consider kind of a significant increase there, and that is due to the fact that we had budgeted money last year for 6th grade, knowing that they were coming to our building to have an accompanist for chorus. Ms. Figge has since taken on 5th grade as well, and this is the model which she uses. So we have also included 5th grade in that this year, which is why there's an increase there. Are there any other questions on page 4? Okay, page 5 we go. I have several things on this page, so it won't be quite as quick. 72, line 72, supplies science. So that is our mystery science and the supplies that go along with that. Last year, I believe it was last year, was our first year that we adopted mystery science as our science curriculum. So that is something that you will see every year. That amount will probably be pretty consistent as long as we have mystery science as our science curriculum. There's a subscription fee that we pay, and then there are consumables that go along with that. That is a K-5 program.
And that is a little bit less than the first year we bought. The first year is a subscription, and we bought all of the kits that came with each lesson. So that had all the equipment plus consumable items. The plan was always to do that the first year and then keep the equipment each year, like the triple beam balances and the graduated cylinders. You don't have to replace those every year, you take care of them. Keep that, so we did not have to purchase the kit the following year, we just need to fill in the consumables, so the paper plates and the Dixie cups and the string beans and whatever it might be. So it is a little bit less than our first expenditure on mystery science.
Okay, then line 73 is consistent, that's a sixth grade Rise Center materials cost for the sixth grade science. Line 74, because there's no request there, I also wanted to address that. The sixth grade science teacher had originally requested news ELA. They believed that this year we were going to potentially need options for remote. And they do not feel that they will need that for next year, and so is not requesting that, for next year. So that is why that is a, your request for change. Line 75, dues and fees, that is the sixth grade Challenger field trip. So that, again, is the second year it's been in our budget, but certainly historically hadn't been in our budget for that. Any questions for science? Okay, going to skip to line 77, textbook social studies. That is an increase. This is due to sixth grade needing to replace some of their current textbooks with ones that are in better condition. So that's why that request is $1,700. Skipping down to, not skipping down, not,
Line 78,
okay?
what are you've used nothing this year for periodicals, yet you're asking for?
So that is because they got taken out of a different periodical line instead of the social studies periodical line. So that has been addressed and will be put in appropriately in the future, but that's.
Okay.
Line 82, travel field trips. This is another one of those, if next year is a regular year, this travel field trip request is based on field trips that were taken prior to COVID and we hope will return. We don't want to get rid of it just because we haven't used it, because we do in fact hope that we're going to be able to get out of our buildings on that. Any other questions on page 5? Okay, page 6. I have nothing highlighted. Are there any questions on page 6? All right, moving right along. Page 7. Page 7, I wanted to talk about line 106 and line 111. We're going to call this, Erica was new last year. I think, so line 106 is contracted services, and I believe that a fee that was put in dues and fees last year was actually put into both of these lines, which is for our visual and performing arts GT fee that we pay. It's actually a contracted service. It's been included correctly this year, which is why you'll still see it there because it was included last year, but why I have removed that from line 111. It was a request that had been given to me last year on paper, but then it was also added in by central office to the contracted services line. So that's what that is. Any other questions on page 7? Okay, moving along to page 8. Page 8, I have nothing highlighted. Any questions? Okay, page 9, line 145. There is a request, and this is a request that has actually come up at least since I've been principal, which is for some new chairs in the library. If you've ever been in our library, we have these big boxy wooden chairs. Not sure if you've met 5-year-olds, but big boxy wooden chairs for 5-year-olds, not necessarily the best fit. And so we are hopeful that we can get some medium-sized chairs so that both the older kids and the younger kids can fit more comfortably in the chairs. And this is at the table that they have, which is where they do their instructional lesson before they go to the course. So that's what that request is. Questions on page 9 other than that? Okay. Page 10. I have nothing highlighted. I Are there questions on page 10?
Actually, if we could go back to page 9,
Absolutely.
line 149. Just that seems, the difference seems out of character with the other
Wages.
rates, percentage-wise. So,
So I'm not sure what percentage they looked at, but I believe this is one of the contracts that is being negotiated this year. And we do have two secretaries that I believe will come out of that line. And Peter and Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
So the ESP contract includes ed techs, secretaries, food service workers, and cafeteria workers, all in the same contract.
What does ESP mean?
Essential programs, services. And that's a abbreviation for those different positions. Here's the problem. When you look at our current salaries for those individuals, in some spots, we are $2 and $3 below other communities. So when you look at the chart of comparisons to our folks to other communities, we're at the bottom of that list. So we're gonna have to inject some serious dollars in, so that we don't lose people. Right now, you've got ed techs at a premium. They haven't left us yet, but they're leaving other communities to go to these places where they're paying $2 more an hour. So the increase, the high percentage increase that you see on the far right is exactly what that relates to.
The increase, we're at the bottom, does the increase put us just average or
Yeah,
above?
it pretty
or
much did.
Just gets us,
So it puts us in the middle of the pack.
okay.
okay. And this increase,
So we haven't negotiated this yet.
that was, okay, that
This
was,
is an amount that's in here as a placeholder.
okay. Got it. That's the question I wanted to ask.
Any more questions on page 9?
Thank you.
Page 10. Nothing on there in particular, if there's something to question about? That includes my version of the Winslow Elementary budget. Before I make my last statement, does anybody have any final questions?
Back on page 10, I'm sorry, I've been a few pages behind you for a while. On line 160, we have gone more than double the tuition reimbursement for a principal. Can you explain that, please?
Or 161?
160 or 161?
160.
61 is 300% done.
161.
So 160.
That's not the question that I'm asking right now. I'm asking about
So-
160.
Last year, we, if I remember correctly, that's one of the things we cut and we went through parts of.
So what happens is, as part of the contractual service in payroll, it's 4860, which includes the technology and course reimbursement. So when we get down to the nitty gritty and we're really hurting to try to find, I ask the building administrators if anyone's planning on taking any courses, and if they're not planning on taking courses, we make that cut at the final hour, even though it's a contractual obligation that we have. So what you see in there is we didn't have it last year. They cut it.
So that's the same rationale for 161.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, additional person as well, right?
Any final questions?
Any other questions for her? No, I assume it's Shelley, right?
All right, real quick, I'll wrap this up. A few things I wanted to make sure to bring up is as we think about the future, next year, from your mind, we'll be looking at literacy curriculum as we did this year with math. We'll also be continuing to look at long-term social, emotional, behavioral, and academic impact of the pandemic and what resources will be needed, are needed, and will continue to be needed to support our students. So, that's for you. Thank you.
As a comment, I think that the budget reflects some of the goals that they set too, so you kind of see it. The goals that you set have kind of put forward into some of these lines. So I like seeing those goals being met, so that's why we need it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the changes of the configuration of the building and COVID and everything else makes it hard to compare a year-over-year budget, which, you know, had been pretty straightforward for years, but, you know, of course, we gotta mix that up, so. But we'll see where it goes, and then we're gonna, you know, add on a couple of more things.
Here comes the fun.
Just look at the difference in gas and fuel.
I don't know.
So what I'll review with you will be a very few quick hitters because my budget, unfortunately for me, is not pages and pages and pages. But I think we all work very hard and best we can do what we need to accomplish. I know there's a lot of questions this year with the services that support our building. And when I say that, I'm talking about our electricity, our fuel oil pricing, and our propane pricing, which I think it frightens all of us. So I do have some good news for you, and that's with our electricity. Fortunately, last year, we contracted with Competitive Energies and purchased our electricity through Competitive Energies, and we're in a contract with them for until 2026. And this contract is very, very valuable right now, because that's the side of the power that you're seeing, everybody's seeing their rates doubling. And that's the side that we locked into with Competitive Energy. And we locked in at pricing, and I'm just gonna let you see what we're saving by doing this. We're locked in at 0.069 per kilowatt hour. And I just talked with our Competitive Energy broker this last week, to see, you know, where we would have been if we weren't in this contract. We would be paying right now 1.21 per kilowatt hour. So that's the kind of money that we're saving by being, you know, involved with this contract with Competitive Energy. So that's exciting news that, you know, we had the forethought, you know, to enter into a contract with this energy broker. So that's exciting. Now on the demand side, you know, CMP controls that. We can't walk in with a broker. You know, but as of August 1st, they did have an increase of 42 usage. That increase is like 8% to 10%. And it depends on the usage on how much, you know, they go up with that. So we did plan budgeting for 10%. Yes, sir.
This is more comment than a question. One of the things that really impressed me in the last two times we've gone to new buildings / new technology, the lighting is an example of where we're using less electricity per bulb because of the technology. But we also have a way that we leave the room and then after so many, I don't know the cycle, it shuts off. Compare that to the old junior high and older buildings. We're getting more light for less money. And so while we may be paying more, we're, our technology and our upgrades in our buildings really have kind of offset that in some degree. So I think that's a good point to make. And then those two wings and the new junior high is
really, more modern and saves us money every day because of it.
As we move forward too, I continually upgrade in the buildings and parking lots, from the old, halide, the old fluorescent bulbs, I'm getting away from that, and we're going to LEDs throughout the campus, last year I just did, the shorter pole lights on the exterior of the elementary. Took out all the old metal halides, we put LED, the lighting's better, it's brighter, you feel more comfortable if you're walking at night, you feel safer because you can see what's around, where the old metal halides, they were the orange glow, and you couldn't really tell, So, it is a savings, it's a huge savings. One of the other things that we'll need to look at this year that will be, noticeable for us will be, the propane pricing. This year, we've not locked in on a price yet, we're still watching the market, we're working with our broker, and right now they're projecting at around $1.99 a gallon. And that's up from $1.25 last year. And I always put those prices in there so that you folks can see, what we're paying this year versus what we may be paying next year. I did look back on some history that I had, and I think the highest that we ever paid for propane was back in 2018. We paid $2.34 a gallon back then. So I guess at $1.99 a gallon, we're still getting a pretty good bargain if that's the price we have to lock in on. The next line would be your fuel oil. We've not locked in on fuel oil. The broker we work with, he's advised us to kind of be patient, watch the market, and that's exactly what we're doing. And the market had gone up to around $2 a gallon, and just today, it's come back down at $2.84. So that's encouraging news. And that was another thing that I looked back on, looked at some history, and back in 2014-15, that year we paid $3.17 a gallon for fuel oil. So if we can even lock in at $2.84, again, I have to say, we're gonna get a bargain. So hopefully we don't. Hopefully we'll continue to watch that. We'll work with our broker. We'll keep an eye on the market, and as soon as we can get a decent price, we'll certainly lock in very quickly. So that's three of the major components that really drive a lot of costs of the budget and the maintenance of the buildings, those three areas. So one of the other things I'd like to have you folks look at is on page number 13. And this is really where the bulk of the money goes with the maintenance budget. And this is really the maintenance of the building. You'll see that this year it's going up at the elementary. And that's due to a few things that we'd like to upgrade in the building. Some of the things are very necessary. Some of the noted electrical repairs are to add some mag holders to the double doors upstairs and the upstairs wings. Let more of the sunlight in. It helps with the movement of the heating. One of the other big hitters that I'm looking at this year is a car key security system in the building, and which it would make it easier to manage, because as you know, the building has a lot of entries, and they're in and out of the building and all these entries, getting kids on recess, trying to find keys, manage keys get lost, keys get misplaced, and it's hard to manage that. You can't delete a key out of the system. Whereas if you have a card, such as the high school does and the junior high does, when that card gets lost, you can delete that card and that code, and you can start fresh.
Now, would this be something that would be campus-wide access, or is this specific building access?
Well, certainly the cars that would operate at the elementary wouldn't operate in this building. Unless they were programmed because of the shared, and, you know.
Like
our
yourself
teacher,
or administrator,
right,
like
correct.
Peter?
A shared support person or a staff member, then that car would be able to program. All
That's why I asked, you know, I wasn't sure how it worked.
Obviously, this is a key component to the security of the building. A key component. It's an important component of the security of the building. Of course, we've talked about it.
I think it's, be a much better system to be able to manage and support that building in one sheet. Certainly would. The other thing I'm asking for this year is, the building and room signage throughout the building. The signage that they have in place right now is visible to the building. It's getting very, very tired. You know, there's been a lot of changes in the building. We need to, you know, really need to relabel a lot of the rooms and spaces in the building. And with the system that we have there now, it's almost impossible to do. So I think it's, if we look at that, if that's something that we can afford to do, I think it's a worthy project for doing that building. The next line would be 209. And you'll see that I've added an increase in that line. And what that line consists of is primarily, you know, fixtures, lighting, filters, walk-off masks, and things such as that. But one of the things that we're finding, go ahead, John.
The HVAC filters, is that something that's changed the rotation since COVID, and, or is that still the same rotation of filters in and out?
Oh, yes, we continually are changing filters all the time. And if anything, right now, we're paying much better attention to the town, you know, to be sure that, you know, good quality filters in all our equipment. And we are ventilating a lot more now than we ever did before, you know, because of COVID and,
right.
You know, because that's what we need to do.
Thank you.
But one of the things that we're finding is the faucets and toilet fixtures that we mentioned are failing incredibly fast. You know, and it was kind of funny today because when I gave these three little cheap notes, you know, I kept thinking, I thought, you know, it's been since 1991, 92, these fixtures in this building. And they're failing daily because of their age. And then I got to thinking, well, how many is in there? And, but as a little side note, you know, I got to counting as far as toilets, there's 64 toilets in that building. And there's 87 sinks in that building. So, you know, I'm buying a lot of faucets and toilet fixtures. And so, you know, it's just a little side note there. But really, those two lines are the bulk of my budget, along with the services that support the building itself. And that's what I'm presenting tonight. Is there any questions?
Question for you, if I could, on snow removal. That was a significant increase.
Yep.
213.
Well, what we did is we went out to bid this year. We've not been out to bid since.
I remember that.
11.
Yeah, it's been like 2011, 12, something like that. And we had just extended his contract. He never went up on the pricing, and it's been a long time. Steve Martin has been with us since I can remember. And ever since the town stopped doing our summer meeting. And that was back in 1998, 99. And he's been with us ever since then. And, but this year, you know, it was only the right thing to do. I have a time so I can spend and, you know, put it out for bid and it was go better, but it still was not probably close enough that we can pay in
This is one of those lines that we should be thankful it was low in the past and
the
not.
past. Well, yeah, well, even when I put it up to bid, I thought, oh my God, be careful what you wish for, shall, you know. It was the right thing to do, it really was.
Given the amount of snow that's being removed and being familiar with, some of the commercial requirements, the cost is not out of line.
Not at all, not at all. David, you have a question?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Line 183, please, overtime wages custodian. We've spent about less than a quarter of our budget this year, and the budget for next year is the same amount. So I'm wondering if this 4,500 is based upon multiple years, because it appears we're not going to come close to that number this year.
Well, if we have to go back to our normal life, we'll use that. If we don't go back to normal life next year, chances are we won't use that.
So can you explain more about what it is in a normal year that results in more overtime?
What happens at the elementary is it's along as the other program. So we're almost over for second. Weekends included. And we have a lot of activities that go on weekends. We have craft fairs that happen, chorus events, band events, and it requires a lot of additional cover.
Now, some of those are reimbursable by, if it's an outside entity using the school, they pay back, but that'd be on a revenue one.
There are some groups that run the facility or use the facility that they are billable hours. So we do, I do bill for those.
Thank you.
I suspect that when the director of buildings and grounds is doing that work, when we don't have any substitute custodians, there's not any charges for that line, it's how it should be. I'll just advocate for it, so I see her in the building at odd hours of the day and night taking care of things.
We're all doing what we need to do, make sure it works. Anything else I can answer? Someone over there, Karen?
Any other questions?
What's that?
All right.
That's so cool.
Thank you. All right, we're on to junior high.
Mine's only 23 pages, so I'm just going to show you my cheat sheet. It's useful for me, probably more so than it will be for you. All right, so let me preface this by saying this is a draft, and many of your questions you had for Erica, you will see lines that have not been spent yet, maybe because we haven't had, like, for example, field trips, nothing's heard, a lot of that expenses at the end. There have been changes in since actually meeting with Amanda and Peter last week. We try to spend the money if, obviously we have it from last year. When looking at the history, it's been difficult. Erica and I were joking before this. If you look at the 3-year history, it's been nearly impossible to do that. 2 years ago, the pandemic was shut down in March. Last year with cohorts every other day. The 6th graders have left, so supplies, scholar, all of this stuff is different.
Hey, John, and I want to reiterate that so that when we discuss this with the town council, those 3 points that you just made should be noted, because it is going to reflect some interesting changes. And I think that should be brought up at the time that we bring this forward.
So we'll get started. John asked the question earlier. When looking at our budget, we do try to focus on the academic goals, as well as the social emotional component for middle school kids. You'll see a lot of field trips. So it's not just the scholar supplies, the pencils, the digital copies of Next Generation Science. That obviously is super important, but so much of the middle school is that other component. So that does tie in We do take that into consideration when building the budget. My cheat sheet, I'm not gonna hammer out every single line, but it does go page by page, so please stop me if you have questions. Beginning on page 1, line 1, I think the question was asked earlier, you will see a decrease in that. We are replacing a few staff, we've seen a few resignations, we've had a lot of turnover in the last month, so that is a decrease. Line 2, we're proposing 18,000. This year was 15,000. We're at 9.2 currently. Hard to project what the future holds, but even looking at the history, obviously with a few less staff, we felt it was important to keep that number. Jump down to line 16 on page 1. This is our tuition reimbursement. Those are the 4 teachers by contract that have elected or would like to take courses next year. One in particular is an emergency certification that would have a certification, and others are master's programs, etc. Page 2. Yeah.
Please, through the chair. Question, Bill?
Yes.
The emergency certification, is that the stuff that being covered under the new under the dome stuff that's being pushed out by LD 1977 or whatever it is, that's currently going before the board, before the main legislature now?
If they're under emergency certification, they have 3 years to take care of what they need to take care of. That's basically that's the bottom line.
Okay.
So we would, if we had somebody that we've hired under emergency certification, we would apply for it again next year with the understanding that they're working towards what they need to do.
Okay, so they're, okay.
And not all of those are emergency certifications, but one in particular.
One is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Page 2, line 22, contracted services, you see a pretty significant increase there. SRO, we do share. JMG, the second notes, that 12.5. Last year, we were supposed to take on that expense at the middle school. For those of you that are new to the board, JMG has only been in existence, I think we reintroduced it just a couple of years ago, and they've paid all of the expenses. It's a program we offer our 7th and 8th graders and one course at the 6th grade level. So our share kicks in July to help pay for the teacher's stipend or teacher's salary. So that's 12.5. Another additional expense is right below that, Acadia. We've had more students with mental health issues, concerns. We have a few that we're worried about right now that programming may need to help occur elsewhere. Sometimes it's a day treatment program for just a week at a place like Acadia in Bangor, and they do charge a fee for services as they educate them through their services. So we felt, as Erica talked about, in returning back to some normalcy, mental health is a real thing. We need to be prepared for that. The other expenses are things that we used every year. I don't think there's anything new on there. I did leave presenters in. We haven't had a presenter, I think, in 2.5, 3 years. Our last one was Travis Mills. That's just an example of trying to get someone in to give maybe a motivation speech to our students. It could be on various topics. Page 2 still, lines 28 and really 29. This is a question asked earlier by Jay. Again, looking at the history of our supplies scholar and supplies non-instructional has been difficult with the changing of guards over the last few years. So I've taken into consideration what we have left this year and that those changes. Let's flip the page unless there's any questions on page 2. Line 32 on page 3, you see a significant decrease. We've had many types of software, and I know this is being discussed at the district level as well. The Padlets, the Pixtons that was in our budget in the past. We have broken those down into department specific. So if a social studies teacher wants one of those subscriptions, we've gone through the department, so you see a decrease there. Lines 34 through 37 are art. As you know, we've had a change in art teachers. Before leaving, Mrs. Pelletier did give input on the needs for the continued programming curriculum next year. So those numbers are based on that for the 7th and 8th grade. Line 39, typically we have an author visit the school. We do workshops for one day, we do an assembly. We have not used those funds. Again, it hasn't been a quote unquote normal school year, but we'd like to leave that in. Turning to page 4, line 42, we will see an increase there. Many of those are replacing current textbooks that are existing in our curriculum now. Some of that is free reading, but the revision of much of the curriculum with the work of Michelle Lake, English teachers want some new materials in the classroom. Line 44, you will not see this in your packets. All you will see is a request for the $96 for Padlet. Our English teachers and Michelle met with iReady on Friday afternoon. English teachers came running down to me at 1:30. I called Michelle at 1:45, called Peter at 2:15 and said, hey, can we put approximately $1,000, is this correct, Michelle? As a placeholder, if you don't see that in your line 44, to purchase the iReady, just the database?
iReady Reading Diagnostic.
Diagnostic.
It's similar to the iMath diagnostic, so it will give us a score on where kids are reading, what's their Lexile level, you know, what are their next steps instructionally and so forth. The concern with the junior high school level with the two faculty that are there is they don't have a Title I program. They don't have the same kinds of support to my kind of elementary school. So in their classroom, they have a wider range of readers, from very low performing struggling readers to on-grade level readers. Finding out where those kids are individually is a challenge. This assessment will allow us to do that. And then finding out what to do for each child. Like, where is Erica at? And here's something that will be her need versus John. Here's what can we do. That's incredibly helpful to teachers and to our kids. That's what we want to be doing. So this really targets. It also will give our teachers, and will give our kids a growth measure so that we can track their growth, very similar to what we're going to be able to do in math. So we were kind of excited by the opportunity, and it met the need that the two English faculty were very concerned about. So this will meet that need.
Jumping down to lines 46 through 51 on page 4, that covers our STEM program. That's really two different teachers requesting those things. It's our both STEM and hands-on technology course. It's replacing such things as Lego, the digital designs. We've also included the dues and fees, hoping our kids can return to many of those competitions that they have not attended in the last couple of years, actually. Flipping to page 5. You will see a super major increase on line 53, technology software. This is the iReady math program that Erica just presented K through 6. We've had district meetings with everyone, Keith included, Michelle, Chad for high school, and included some teachers. It's something that it's evidence-based, it's just a great program. We're feeling something that
The program that we have presently is outdated, and if we were to go to Curtis today and go look at the reviews on the big idea that they have, it doesn't score very well anymore. Math instruction has changed. So just to update and to be in line with what we're doing K6, so we got K8 even better. Very consistent. And then of course high school has a different structure where they break into the geometry of one whole class, algebra of one whole class, totally different structure.
Moving down to the instrument, like you take a look at line 59, there's some need for supplies, band instruments, et cetera. That's gone up 106%. You'll also see the COVID-safe band masks, again, depending upon where we are at, subject to change based on various drafts in our budget. Flipping the page to page 6, under vocal, line 62. Erica mentioned this earlier, the accompanist for chorus. So that line, the proposal for Mr. Dosty to work with our chorus students, and that does cover performances outside of the typical school day as well. We've also included line 63, 64, supplies, and the typical, if you look at the history of the junior high, the KD auditions, the festivals, the District 4 and such, costs that accompany that. Lines 67 and 68, you'll see a large increase. We do have a new PE teacher that will begin soon. She has worked with the high school teacher. They've gone through materials. And one of the major expenses in line 68 would be purchasing of mountain bikes for middle school students to access trails and to implement into the phys ed curriculum. Turn the page to page 7, line 70, under textbook science. This is the rental fee for the RISE program. Sound redundant, many of these, Eric has talked about this as well. Since changing to the next generation science standards, this is a program that we are in year 3.
I believe so. It saves us money rather than buying the curriculum, we rent it from the University of Maine. And so whenever there's an update to the program, we get the newest stuff. And it comes in kits that include all of the science equipment, which is quite expensive. So we just get the kits delivered and we swap them out with the University of Maine. As a department, we do talk about, is this the curriculum we want to stick with for the long haul? There are a couple of other options we've explored over the last couple of years, but for next year, this is what we're going to stick with now. As we continue to look at, there's a couple of others out there that we're looking at. But this is the right.
Under line 72, you'll see Portland Sea Dogs. That's not just to go to the Portland Sea Dogs game. They run what is called an education days. It's a STEM focused. They have educational activities. We're looking to take a grade level each year. We're experimenting with a grade level this spring. We've been invited at a super duper discount. They'll have interactive activities with Med Science, Maine Robotics Institute, etc. So it's a really STEM science focus to bring all students for a day to get that experience of both baseball and a lot of science that day. So that's what we're hoping for. Jumping down to line 76, the desks, these are for social studies specifically. We ordered some last year in the budget. They are specifically a larger individual sized desk to accompany maps, mostly maps from the social studies teacher. The standard desks are very small for middle school. If you take a look at Ms. Lambert's classroom, this is what I'm talking about. So they don't have to up and reroute and use large tables. So that's what the request there is, to keep adding additional desks to that space. Flipping to page 8, line 81. Here's an example of what I was referring to earlier. We've only spent $80 up to this point. Those trips have not occurred yet. So again, we're basing that proposal on next year's expenses, and those are end of the year trips per grade level with Damascotta and the Lake George trip. Any questions so far?
This is back on the social studies desks on line 76.
Yes.
It sounds like the request is to systematically replace the desks in that classroom. Will this be the first iteration of that? And if so, how many do we need to go through?
This will be the second phase. This will put us, I think we got 8 last year. I have to double check for you. I think it'll put us at 18.
And so we'll have one more year after this?
One more of chief runs about 20, the big class will be 22 students.
Okay, thank you.
My memory's poor on the name, I apologize. Wasn't there a Camp Kiev,
Yeah.
Camp Kiev? I don't see that
Yeah, so we had it in the contracted services previously. Title monies paid for it 2 years ago. We did not budget for it because we've been assisted with other funding. I'm not sure if that's a possibility, if that's the question you're answering.
What I'm asking is, are the kids able to go?
I didn't budget for it, no. But they've come to us, John, for two years. We did the overnight experience 1 year. It did not go as planned. There wasn't a lot of follow-up. It was one of the classic things, you go to this team building, but the next day everyone kind of forgets about it, and that's our own fault. So Chris did some work two years ago. We started having them come to us at a discount. And they did team building right at our school, which we started implementing. And then title monies, I don't know if it's on the spot. Title monies paid for it pre-pandemic.
I remember some positive feedback, that's why I bring it up. Because I'd heard some good things came out of it in the original format. So I didn't know.
So, data there is good, but it's incorporating all those things back into the school day and getting taught, you know what I mean, just with everything else, revisiting. But I think even when we did budget, we get it cut, and that's where the title money.
I know, that's why I brought it up, because I was always against the cut.
It was very mixed. The last time we did it, mixed feelings, both students and staff.
Okay.
The reason is because of the lack of workers. Having quality, like some kids would go to a team building and be like, that was incredible. And then the next one, kids are bouncing off with just no.
I see.
So it was okay at best. In my opinion, the last time we did it.
Okay.
For a lot of money.
When we started this school year, we tried something new, where rather than the kids coming in and sitting, and here's my class, and here's what I expect, and on to the next, they went outside, they did the team, I mean, we could go part of adventure style activities with our own faculty and staff. We have the knowledge and skills among different ones of us, people like us.
And save the money.
Yeah, so we tried to recreate that experience on the first day of school, which I think got very positively used in
That sounds good.
So I agree with you, I think that's an important experience, and some people can see a week about it.
Yeah, I think it also, the transition to junior high is sometimes difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons I like that program, was because socially, the kids were able to feel a part of something that was no pressure academically.
We have some very talented teachers, we have parents.
Yes, we do.
Would love to include that day one, that first day.
And that sounds like a lovely way to start the year, so I commend you on that. Very good.
Our own resources.
Thank you for the update.
Page 9, line 95, you'll also see another request for tables. I'm gonna have a conversation with Shelley about the storage over at the other building to see, this might be an example where we can find some really nice equipment that's just being stored at this point. So stay tuned on that one. That's not a special or specific desk per se. Line 99 is under our gifted and talented field trips. We have done some of those already this year, requesting some of the same things for next year. Increase in cost due to travel. There's a lot of that.
If I could add on that line, is Burnt Island still something that they do, or is that gone by the wayside? I know the director down there changed, and
That's elementary, isn't it?
No,
that's elementary, excuse me.
Yes.
All right.
No, that doesn't ring a bell.
That's why. They moved it when, yeah.
So the answer is, I'm not sure if the program still exists, years I've been.
Right, the woman that was really passionate about that,
Yeah,
so that's retired, and that Department of Marine Resources, I believe it was not doing the same thing that we were participating in.
All right. Sorry, I forgot what school it was.
That's-
Yeah, it was a great program, but I understood there was some changes there.
That's my understanding, I haven't checked into that for a couple of years, but that was voted along with that fact, sort of first off to what we traditionally done.
Yeah, obviously, I forget her name, but she was awesome down there, but obviously people change and, you know, circumstances. All right. Thank you.
On pages 10 through 16 will be Mr. Goldberg shortly, so if we just skip the athletics for a moment, then jump ahead to page 16. We're going to take it to line 189 under contracted service. This is under our guidance department. You'll see a request for Kennebec Behavioral Health School-Based Services. That's extra supports with a social worker, outside supports. Peter or Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's not spent this year because we took it from somewhere else, COVID funds.
We had some carryover Title V money this year that we will not have next year.
So we needed to budget in the regular budget this year, we separated the cost of the contract in 3 buildings.
Page 17 is all our media. We do share services with high school. So a lot of that is new materials for junior high students, specifically the media. Pages 19 and 20 cover the admin and office staff. Stop me if you have questions on any of those, because the last section is Shelley, page 20 and 23 will be building and maintenance.
Go ahead, Jim.
3 questions, going backwards, starting on page 19. The wages at Tech 3, 196, going up by 21.5%. Could you elaborate on that? 196?
Are you on page 19? On some page
17, 196.
Oh.
All right, that's it.
I'm sorry.
I suspect it has to do with an increase potential projection and, you know, you speak to this on the ESP contract.
That's exactly what it is. It depends on where they are on the scale, where they are on the projection. This would probably be one of those individuals that is getting paid $2 less per hour than somebody else right now, based on where they are on steps, which is why there's such a large increase.
Okay, going back to page 9, please. Line 91. Could you describe what some of the contracted services are in gifted and talented? I see it's going down by about a third, and there's no description of what that is. Could you fill us in a little?
Yeah, so it could be guest speakers from, she hasn't done much this year or last. It could be a guest from certain businesses. All I can think of is digital performing arts. But in the past, a lot of business type, which oftentimes doesn't come with a fee. So volunteer services.
Okay, and lastly, on the same page, line 97, I see we've kept Mega and NSTA dues and fees. The rest of the dues and fees are gone. Do you have any idea what those were for?
The rest are gone.
Yeah. They appear to be gone. There's $150 left in the budget, and the notes say that's Mega and NSTA. There's an additional $570 to spend.
Do not know.
Okay,
I can find out.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Earl.
Page 18, line 220. With the Oculus, the reality headsets, is there any subscription that is associated with those?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
And should there be a question back at you? I don't believe so.
We are, the organization that we are talking with now provides the headsets and they provide subscriptions to different platforms. So that way, everything is, it's all included, but the subscription goes out over 3 years. And the content is updated, added, it's all covered under the subscription. I can get you that information. Okay, please.
Any other questions for Jason at this point? Obviously, again, another year-over-year budget, it's hard to compare. It'll all come together at the bottom, and we'll see where all that brings us. But all right, I guess, Shelley, are you up next? So Jim's, oh, Jim for doing his part, okay.
I have to echo Eric and Jason. Doing a 3-year average during COVID has been impossible. Obviously, we didn't have some seasons during COVID that made it impossible. But the junior high budget is relatively small. When I say small, obviously 75,000, whatever it is, $80,000 is not a small amount. But out of that, 61% is coaches stipends, which is Class C, which is Schedule C, which is collective bargaining.
What page are we on, please?
We are on page 11.
Thank you.
So the stipend line is, the biggest line is 47,820, and it's 61% of the overall budget. I don't want to go over line item with you because I know we've been here a while, so I'll just kind of say to you, most of the rest of the budget is day-to-day cost of running sports, contracted services for officials. There's only one team in here to get uniforms, scheduled to get uniforms, and that's outdoor track, and they haven't had uniforms in 7 years. So they're the only going to get uniforms. But some of you may be saying, okay, Jim, how come on contracted services field hockey today, you have 420, you only spent 330, you're asking for 450 next year. Again, we lost games due to COVID. We've had less participation, so we didn't have 2 teams this year. So obviously, I don't want to lower that until we can see what we're going to look at when we come out of COVID. My hope is participation numbers will go back up. This year, in junior high basketball, we're on one team. I hear there's a big group of 6th graders coming up this 12, 13, so hopefully we can have 2 teams maybe next year. So I didn't want to cut anything until we see what we look like when we come out of COVID. We are about 4% in this budget, which is a lot, but again, you're not talking a great deal as far as the overall budget. Yes, John?
Only because it's been a while since I've been in junior high games. Typically, the schedule was more local and less compared to the high school, which travels further distances. Is that still the case?
Yeah,
all
we're playing the
schools?
Central Maiden League, which is all the 25-mile radius.
Right.
That did change during COVID.
Okay.
But it did change in the sense that we had games scheduled this year, and schools may have been in COVID protocol, we didn't get the plans. None of our teams played a full schedule. We had games, we lost games to COVID either because of us or other schools. And that's why when you look at the budget, you say, Jim, you're asking for more money, but yet you didn't use that budget. And again, it's just too tough to kind of figure out until we get out the vote.
I'm bringing this up to relate to this question. Have you heard from any other schools that their numbers have shrunk to the point where you've got less teams to compete against? In other words, are there some of the junior highs that may have even less athletes than Winslow may decide, okay, we're not going to have this sport because there's not enough kids? Have you seen it? Is it shrinking or growing, or is it about the same?
Every school across the state, at the high school and junior high level, all have diminishing numbers. We all hope that's just a COVID thing. We all hope we come out of it. Nobody's lost programs. But yet, like I told you, girls basketball, junior high girls basketball, we had one team. Traditionally, we've had 2 teams. So field hockey this year, traditionally we've had 2, we've had 1. Girls soccer, traditionally 2, we had 1. So we're seeing the impact of COVID, and we're hoping, as Erica's numbers are up at the elementary school, that eventually we're going to see that, at least a little while.
Okay, you're seeing it throughout the league and not just here. Okay, that was my question.
Yes, go ahead, Jake.
Most of the numbers seem to follow your general explanation, but could you explain on 142, what was the $450 of wages for boys basketball that was so much above budget that we don't have for next
We
year?
streamed every game, which was an extra cost.
Okay.
Everything went up, because we're not allowing outside, we streamed every game, which is added expenses to that line. And
So that's
again,
wages?
that comes out of wages, yeah, because people work here, the employees of the school.
Okay.
So we streamed every game, that's inside, and that's where that expense came up. And again, hopefully we'll get out of COVID and we can get out of the streaming business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Very good. Thank you, Jim. Now, shall we start?
We'll go through the maintenance, for the junior high. I won't go through all the explanations again of the utilities, but I do want to hit on the utilities real quick. I want to start on page number 20, and we'll start right on, line 258. This is the operation of the plant, and the water and sewer utilities for the junior high section of the building. They're all on 1 meter. So as you see here, it's a 1/3 used water. So what I've done with the water, the sewer, and a few other things is, I portion that out and I use a simple formula, a 2/3, 1/3 formula. So when the sewer bill comes in, I break it down, 2/3, 1/3, and the same with the water. So that, because they do not have their own water bill or sewer bill. So that's how I break that out. Just simple math, 2/3, 1/3. Because there's no other way to determine the usage. That's the only way that I have. So that kind of explains that. And the electricity, it is the same thing.
I do have a question, and it's only for curiosity. At a house, your responsibility for the water and the sewer starts and begins at a certain point. Is the town responsible up to a certain point, and then our responsibility, so if there's a break in the water line, I know it's all coming out of the same town money, but I'm just curious if.
It's the same thing, really. Although I do remember,
We had a problem in the elementary school one year, and I thought about it then, a lot of water. I remember that. I'm just curious, at what point?
2010, had underground baggage.
Yeah,
And because it was in our parking lot, it was our nickel and our dime that
Okay.
had to cut the pavement, bring in the contractor, do the repairs. We had to do.
is that under insurance? Okay,
The districts.
so we don't have to budget any money for that, because that would be an insurance, right, insurance hit. Okay, thank you.
No, you're welcome. So the same thing with our electricity. When we did the renovation project and did the addition to the junior high, we run everything through the same head gear and the CMP meters. So again, I go with the 2/3, 1/3 formula and break that out every month. On line number 262 on page 21, I'm going back to the propane. The building is heated primarily with propane on that end, along with some electricity. And what I found by watching the propane consumption between the high school and the junior high is the junior high were not consuming as much propane that I anticipated. At the high school end, we are consuming almost double of what we've used in the past, and it's primarily the kitchen. Because of the fact that we're cooking more meals, we're feeding more children, and, I think in all fairness, I need to come up with that same type of formula of the propane usage for at the high school and the junior high. Because they are, you know, they got 200 extra kids here, but they're feeding this kitchen. They're running more equipment, they're running more ovens. And, you know, you put in an extra cooler, walk-in freezer. So obviously, there's more food coming out of this kitchen than there ever was before. And it was just one of those things that you didn't know. You know, we're still driving this car and we're still figuring out what do we need for it and how does it run. So I think what I have done is I've not decreased the consumption amount for the junior high so that in the next year, I can start, and well, actually, I'll start it this year, is splitting that consumption and cost up between the high school and junior high for that propane, because in all fairness, that's really what needs to happen. So, that's here. Now, we will turn to page 22. Line 291, that's the maintenance of the junior high building. And you'll see through, I treat it just as I do any other building. Couple of things that the junior high owns as their own is the inspection of the backboards in their mat lifter. Because it is a mechanical piece of equipment that's in that gymnasium. We need to, and we are mandated to do an annual inspection and any kind of maintenance of equipment. You know, if it's not maintained, it can be a very dangerous piece of equipment. So that's something we've got to do. Along with that is the gym floor. We need to maintain that gym floor just as we do the high school. And you'll see another thing in that list of maintenance is 1/3 chiller and refrigeration maintenance. Because we do annual in work to our walk-in coolers that are attached here at the high school. And part of the food that's in them coolers is consumed by the junior high student. So again, in all fairness, the junior high needs to help pay and maintain those coolers. So, and that's reflected here in that cost. So really, you know, we're still driving this car, as I said, trying to figure out what the needs are and are there still needs? And there are a few little things here and there, but it's nothing that we can't manage. But that's primarily the budget for the junior high section of the building. Is there any questions or anything I can help with?
Line 299, leaf vacuum and walk behind sweeper. I presume that's one piece of equipment being split, cost being split 3 different ways?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Line 271, the workers' comp per custodian has doubled, but we don't see a similar increase in retirement or FICA. Usually those go up similarly.
Well, you know, I don't usually like to, you know, pass the buck on that, but I don't do that entry. That entry is a central office entry. That's not in, you know, FICA Med 8, that's all through payroll and personnel.
So I guess that's a question for you, Peter, to maybe look into. That's okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Okay. Very good. All right, well, that's all the budgets for this evening, which is a pretty good chunk. So that's not going to do it in one setting. So sorry for don't taking so long, but that is a pretty significant chunk of our budget. So, all right. Next up, vote on appointments. I have a list of 5 appointments. John,
Yes.
move you take them as a group?
Second.
We have a second to take them as a
This
group?
is the appointment.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to take the list of appointments as a group. John made the motion, Earl made the second.
When do we vote on the budgets?
Well,
Sorry, well, that's gonna be an easy question.
So you're gonna go through this process with every single cost center.
Yep.
Then, at some point, it's gonna become your budget. You're gonna feel comfortable with what's there and what's not there. 'Cause at some point, you're gonna have all of the numbers, because right now, you're just going over what the requests are. Then you're gonna see the revenues that we have to apply towards these requests. But at some point, you're gonna see what the increase is, and you're gonna say to us, yes, what this makes sense. You're gonna say, ouch, can you do something different? Like, can you go back and look at the lease program and technology to get this down? And we'll make all of those adjustments that we can possibly make and eliminate some of the things that we might feel we need to eliminate to get the costs down. Once that happens, then you'll take a first vote on the budget, and it becomes your budget, and then it goes to the town council for their review.
somewhere in there, though, we might have a workshop with the town council.
Yep.
And we've got something on the agenda for the 28th.
No.
So-
On line 14.
So Meg, what happens is, you take that first vote, goes to town council, we'll have workshops with town council, at some point it goes to the voters to vote on. If it's passed, after it's passed, you'll take a second vote on the budget.
Thank you. All right, sorry, I interrupted
Until
that
we
vote.
get toward the bottom line and we understand what the story looks like. And of course, a lot of things are affected by how it goes at the council based upon what their revenues are looking like.
Yeah, no, that's okay, that makes sense, that answer
because,
suffices for
I
me.
mean, we're coming through some, obviously COVID has been a big effect, but also the reinstatement of revenue sharing and all of those sorts of things that,
Okay.
and obviously the other town needs. So that'll be interesting to see how that all goes.
Thank you, and I.
Every evaluation, there's lots of factors that
So that makes, yeah,
might
makes sense.
affect the council's mood.
So I had interrupted the vote on appointments, my apologies.
Okay, good question though.
So there's a first, a motion and a second.
Motion and a second to take the group as a whole, so if there's no problem with that, I guess I'm looking all in favor of taking them as a whole. That is unanimous, that is good. So do we have a motion to approve the appointments as listed?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Earl, seconded by John. Any discussion? All in favor of the appointments? That is unanimous. Very good. All right, resignations. Peter, of course, accepts those, so we don't have to vote on that. Obviously, there's some significant resignations there, although, you know, we kind of knew it was coming at some point, but thank you, Mr. Price, and we'll surely have more to talk about as we get further in the school year, but, you know, we can tell Peter not to approve this and, you know, go on from there, but.
You can talk to my wife.
Well, you will be missed. You will be missed.
But there's some longtime kitchen staff here, you know, there's some significant changes here, so. And we thank them all for their service to Winslow schools, and they will be missed. So.
Actually, to be fair to Karen, that's not really true, it's a collaborative plan.
All right.
She's listening in.
It's Valentine's Day, so we understand. All right, don't throw the wife under the bus today, all right.
Here, you can take this with you when you go.
You might need all of those.
Yeah.
All right, good save there, pal. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next up, other business. So what we're looking at is doing a special meeting of the board to keep going with budgets in 2 weeks. So this is pretty common for us to do so that we can get our budgets put together and get them to the council in their required amount of time, so they can weigh that against their needs as a whole of the town.
Are we doing 5 o'clock?
Well, I think there'll be a need to do 5 o'clock, or we just,
It's up to you, man. We did 5 o'clock in the past, we provided dinner, but now that we're not eating.
Yeah, I know about not eating, I haven't eaten today. Today's a good night.
but, so I expect are we gonna see, what are we gonna see, high school budget? Probably a central office budget at some point, special ed budget, how many more we got?
ELL, alternative ed, so on.
Okay. We got a ways to go.
I'm just
Oh.
twitching.
Back to a waving, you know, we're all excited.
Yeah, the high school. High school budget there.
Sending a message.
All right, okay.
5 or 6?
You guys are asking for 5?
No, I just,
3? 3?
I'm good with, I'm good with 5. I guess we want to make sure that we get participation, so I guess how's that work for the rest of the board?
I will do my best to be here at 5.
I would prefer 6, but if you tell me 5, I'll try and make it work.
if it's better for both of you, I don't care. I just brought up 5 because that's what we've done in the past.
That's because they fed us.
Okay. So does the difference work better, or?
It's 6, it sounds like 6.
It's easier. It's easier.
So we're good, good
It
with
doesn't
5?
matter.
Okay. So we'll put it in for February 28th at 5 PM.
What about 5:30, be in the middle?
Oh, 5:30?
Would that be better for you? Would 5:30 be better?
Makes it easier to get here.
Okay,
It's all good.
let's do 5:30. Well, split the difference. Early in, early out. But, so that, I think, completes that part.
Could I just go back and ask Jay a question? Because you caught me. The question that you had about the custodian, and Shelley's referred to
Or
me.
just comp.
What was the, so the workers' comp, what line were you looking at there?
Okay, that is 271.
That was close.
So the workers' comp compensation, we budgeted 1556.78, and we spent 1871.49 actual. So payroll has gone with 3219.23. That tells me that we've got somebody that's been out on workman's comp, or has been collecting workman's comp.
We're self-insured.
Did we don't talk about that individually?
No.
Right. But we are self-insured on our comp, right?
We are.
For the so.
We
that
are.
would- So I guess that is the question, is what the projection would be in the next year versus what our actual spend this year.
Well, we didn't have similar increases across other buildings, so
Right.
it does seem to apply to a specific circumstance.
Yeah.
So that's why I just raised the question to make sure we understand why it's
Yeah,
there.
Good
we'll
question.
find out. We'll find
Didn't
out.
sound like we might need.
All right. Okay, so we'll have a special meeting on the 28th at 5:30. Our next regular meeting is the 21st at 6. So as of now, that special meeting is to talk with budgets only. So that is the current plan. And our next regular meeting would be the 21st at 6. March 21st, that's it. Right. So, that being said, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment unless somebody has something else they want to bring up.
I think March 21st, we need have Peter bring the water.
We'll be meeting probably before that too.
Well, only because it's my birthday.
Oh,
It's your whose birthday?
Not today. I'm not meeting.
I go with present. I can wait for 4, we're not gonna do that. All right,
I get this tonight.
so do I have a
Motion to
motion?
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Earl. Do we have a second? We have a second by Jerry. All right, all in favor of adjournment? All right, unanimous.
Thank you, Kevin.
We're gonna get a motion for seconds over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the routines, we anticipated. These are
Okay. Okay, well, I don't